Welcome to welcome back to the Hard News Network live stream. And what we have here is HNN contributor Bold Like a Leopard has been working on a story for a while now. Apparently, from what I understand, it's if people remember the Rachel Maddow segment from a while back where she claimed that Russian bots had hacked the Bernie Sanders Facebook group, and she had screenshots of this, and I remember we covered it, and at the time I think even The Intercept did an article supporting this narrative, but the narrative is complete bullshit. And so Bold Like a Leopard, I guess give people a background on the story you broke, and you can take it from there.
Okay, so essentially the way that I detected it was in February when Politico published 3 stories by the same reporter as Edward Isaac DeVere that were basically trying to paint Bernie Sanders as somebody who did nothing to stop Russian hacking of the election or something like that. And I noticed, and I was actually writing a story for your website that I had no intention of making it about Bernie or anything. It was actually more about the Mueller investigation and the presumption of innocence for a defendant with Trump. And then I noticed that one of the people quoted in one of the 3 articles, I think it was the last one, had mentioned that he was in contact with the Hillary campaign, had told them, had told national security officials about it. And then when pressed to give details about it, he said that he was in contact with American Bridge 21st Century. And that is a super PAC led by David Brock. And this is a person who represented himself as a Bernie Sanders supporter. And that was a huge red flag. I mean, obviously, Jim Boydston, who's on the line too, he's also, you'd probably laugh if anybody said that they could be on both sides, David Brock and Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Because Senator Sanders said that David Brock is scum of the earth. Yeah. So from there, I basically looked through all the details of what Mattis claimed, up to essentially some of the first media representations of him. I found the Rachel Maddow clip, the Huffington Post piece by Ryan Grimm, who also works for TYT.
Yes, I remember that.
And then, I wrote the first article, which I'll show on screen. And then, let me see, can I even show the screen? Yeah, here it is. So this was the first article. It basically documented that whole, and I did lay into why Bernie Sanders did not defend himself properly from this charge. But the fact is that then I saw the names of these 2 individuals who you see. Say hi, Josephine.
Hello.
So I saw them on screen and I said, well, how do we know that these are fake people? Let's just look up their profiles on Facebook. And I did. And they exist, so from there I did interview them, and then I wrote the second article, and I broke down basically all of John Mattis's stories, the stories that he talks about. That's in this one, where I actually went into Ryan Grimm's whole article, which relies on very shaky proof in terms of either, when you think about it, the person making the claims, John Mattis, said that he's a Facebook administrator. Well, if he's a Facebook administrator, then how come he couldn't block an avalanche of Russian trolls? You're an administrator. You can block people from joining the group.
Right.
You have no idea unraveling such a can of worms.
Right. So then I did have, I believe we had 2 interviews together, Josephine and Jim and myself. Also, Crystal Coleman has been on my show. And essentially, the second article is where I outline, this is a person who claimed that fake news is what swung the election in California. And the first article, I already, basically debunked that, because Hillary Clinton polled higher in California than the polls even predicted by 8 points, I believe. And on his website, John Mattis, who complains about the fake news, he features such luminary press agencies as this one. Hold on, let me scroll down here. Rejuvenation Media, which is kind of like a yoga website, basically. He's using them as a press outlet, thelastmenandovermen.com, which is run by you know, a long shot Democratic candidate for Congress in New York who's blocked me on Twitter now. So, you know, that's basically the proof that he had. And the fact of the matter is that Josephine and Jim, who, you know, I'll give the floor to them, they've been trying to get their story out, refute his baseless lies that he's taking around San Diego metro area to these Democratic clubs. Nobody will listen to them. Even people, except for Jamal Thomas, I'll give him credit. He did have them on, but and you know, he gave it the proper gravity. But people on the progressive side are refusing to, or so far as I know, they haven't had them give their day in the public.
Really, just Jamal is the only one. I like Jamal. I'm glad he did it. So, is it just why do you guys think that is? Do you think it's because of your support for Sanders, or they don't necessarily want to speak anything negative against Ryan Grimm?
I really honestly don't know why maybe they just don't think it's an important enough story, or I don't know. I think this is pretty critical because this is all based on lies, and he started out saying he was an admin just to gain credibility. And once it started taking off, then he didn't even have to say he was an admin anymore. But I was originally one of the administrators of Crystal Coleman. She's the one who started the San Diego for Bernie Sanders 2016 Facebook group, and she added me and Sharon Widman as admins. And we were admins for quite a while, and then afterwards I started the community page, the San Diego for Bernie Sanders 2016 community page. So I was no longer an admin, but I kept going on that page. I would post and share articles. Jim, he's the frequent flyer on that page. He was on that page all day. There were other people, Madge. There's other people that were on the page all the time. We can all tell you, including Crystal, because you interviewed her, there was not an inundation of fake Russian news stories. So we were taken aback when we saw these articles, and we contacted the media, said, hey, this is not true. We're the admins, we would know, and nothing. No reply from anyone. They never wanted to retract the story.
You mean you contacted Ryan Grimm in The Intercept, and they didn't even put your statement in the story?
I think that Joanne contacted almost all of the outlets that were having the story, and if nothing else, we were commenting in the links below. When they have a comment section, we would comment and say that. They just ignored it.
Wow. I guess if they put your comments in, it's completely blowing up the whole story, because the story is the Russian bots infiltrated the Bernie Sanders group. And so when you saw the segment on Maddow, because so we have the Ryan Grimm Intercept article, and then we had the Maddow segment, and so
we were thinking, okay, this is just going to die down, and it never does. Just when I'm thinking it's dying down, another news article would pop up with this, and then the biggest one was when we were contacted on Facebook. Hey, we got tagged on the Rachel Maddow clip, and we're like, holy shit, really?
So you basically saw your post one night on the Rachel Maddow show.
Yeah, I was on the it was on the March 21st of 2017 segment, and when she started on her rant about the alleged infiltration of Bernie Sanders social media groups, she used one of my very simple posts on one of the group pages as a backdrop, and a lot of people got the impression that I was an Albanian bot.
Oh my God! So
yeah.
I covered this video. I remember I covered the video, and so I'm speaking with the people who were in the video that she alluded to were Russian bots, but in reality, like most of the cases that it turns out with this, they are actually people. There was the similar situation with, I think there was a woman named Politics Peach. They claimed that she was a Russian bot. She was not a Russian bot. And so, of course, I don't think that was the level of MSNBC. Wow. And so
Well, that's not even what's so like. Another thing I noticed, it was probably like a week and a half ago, is that the post that they featured with Jim's name on it was from March 17th, 2017, which was like 4 months after the election, where he was talking about how George Soros funds Priorities USA, which funds Indivisible, and there's no way that because Indivisible was formed after the election.
Right.
So there's no way for them to claim that this is part of the Russian tampering, whether Jim was involved or not. It's not evidence of anything. It's evidence that Jim hates George Soros, which makes him, like the rest of us, a horrible human being, I guess. But so I mean the actual and by the way, not just people in her group, in their group. Another woman, Alita Pierce from Northern California, also was looped into this.
Right, and I think they interviewed her and they took everything that she said out of context.
Yeah, they completely twisted what she said.
They just wanted the story of, it was Russia. They didn't want to go against the narrative.
Which outlet did that interview of hers? Do you remember? Was it MSNBC or The Intercept, or there was like another outlet that covered the story that just interviewed her? And
which one did the interview with her? I honestly don't. And she tried to contact them and correct it and retract it. You took me out of context, and they didn't.
And was it the Huffington Post?
Her actual reference that they twisted was she was talking about establishment trolls, like people from Correct the Record and stuff like that,
and people who were trying to get money.
Yeah. And she was talking about that stuff, and they took it and alleged that she was talking about Russians, and she wasn't.
We have more. Yeah,
I have it. I have the article. It's right here. It's the Huffington Post, and I'll share the screen here. So they said, I'll even read it line by line. It says. Sometimes it was hard to tell who was doing the trolling and for what purposes. Alita Pierce, 54, who lives in Malibu, was an administrator of half a dozen pro-Sanders Facebook groups and a member of many others. In May 2016, she posted a memo to various Facebook groups about the fake news issue, warning of bogus sites. But they said that doesn't have anything to do with the context of who were the people that was doing it. Now, it does go into a little depth about how she said the first tidal wave of spam was mostly anti-Bernie, Pierce recalled, posted by Clinton backers. David Brock's Clinton backing super PAC had likely paid for some portion of those. And that's the irony that he mentions David Brock in this article. But after Clinton became the Democratic nominee in July, Pierce noticed a switch to anti-Hillary messages with links to fake news and to real news with obnoxious pop-up ads. Every site publishing those, you clicked on the article, you would be slammed with ads and strange articles. It was overwhelming. It was 24/7. But I don't see her mentioning Russia or anything on it. So
never
listened about Russia.
That was lying by omission.
Yeah, we have problems with Correct Record Troll. I think almost all Bernie websites had that problem.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if I encountered hundreds of CTR trolls on various Bernie groups during the primary season.
That was the main point that I made when I covered the video, was that there was a lot of David Brock and Correct the Record trolls that they're now trying to claim were Russian bots. And at the time that they were, I mean, they still do this. They act like Russian bots are the worst thing in the world, and it's completely outrageous. But of course, they completely ignore the fact that Brock and people on the Clinton side were using them.
And then, and thanks to Adrian, along with some previous statements made, John Mattis made a lot of references to connecting with David Brock.
Right, and sorry, you can go ahead, Josephine.
Oh, he admits it. I mean, thanks to you, he comes out and admits it. So, I mean, I don't know I don't know his reasoning for doing this, but when he admits that he's in contact with David Brock, it makes you wonder.
All right, so for context for the audience, so okay, I'm talking with people that MSNBC and The Intercept claim were bots. But then there's another aspect of the story. So apparently Bold Like a Leopard was able to basically, I guess, do some investigative journalism, and you talk to a person who basically admitted to joining this Facebook group to try to infiltrate it for Brock, or how did that story go?
Okay, so the entire nexus of this whole thing is a reporter from San Diego named John Mattis.
God, don't call him a reporter.
But yeah, well, he used to be a reporter. I mean, he used to be on TV.
Right, he was at one time.
So the fact is that this is a guy who he made all these claims, and Ryan Grimm took it at face value, and Ari Melber, by the way, took it at face value. There's a clip of him. I'll send it to you. I haven't done it yet on my channel, but what I started to notice was that this John Mattis seems to be almost tech illiterate, because he couldn't really articulate really what was going on in terms of how these Russian bots were infiltrating anything. I mean, he claimed to be an administrator, which was transparently false if you talk to 2 or 3 people.
Never. He was never an admin. Never.
And yeah, and he would toss out these generalizations. I did some research. He didn't tell us what he did.
No, and in one of the articles he said that he saw them and he had to admit them and he was sorry he did. I'm like, he was never, ever an admin. It was Crystal, me, Sharon Wyndham, and that's it. And after, Crystal's still the only admin left on that page. He was never, ever an admin.
So then we decided, me and Adrian, we do a couple streams. Adrian has a channel called Just My Stupid Opinion. He talks about Canada a lot. So we decided, we would concoct the identity of like the most Canadian person ever, and we gave him a fake name, Grant McKinnon or something. He'd be basically the great Maple Leaf hope for John Mattis' career. And we sent him an email, and basically Adrian, we wrote to him that he was afraid that the Russians were going to hack the Ontario elections and something and screw Justin Trudeau, or what did we even say, Adrian? Yeah, you remember?
Well, pretty much I ended up shooting him off an email from this account as Grant McKinnon, and we were at the time we were coming up on our provincial elections, so I started, and we have a couple other big ones that are coming up soon. There's another provincial election that's going to be pretty big, and then in about just a little over a year, there's the federal election. So I contacted him. I sort of played up on the whole Russia thing. I ended up telling him that I was concerned that we might have some sort of influence, some sort of hacking of the same thing. And what actually was perfect that played up to it was the fact that we were using electronic ballot counting machines. So once I added that in, that was just like the pièce de résistance. So I ended up letting him know that I was concerned about it. I was writing for a magazine which doesn't even exist anymore, so he didn't even do much research into that. So I ended up getting him on the phone. I got him on the phone for about 45 minutes or so, and he went in. I just let him talk. I mostly stayed as quiet as possible and just let him spout as much as he wanted. And he let loose on a lot of information. So, and when Bold and I went over it, we were able to show where the inconsistencies were, and that's where he ended up admitting that he was in daily contact with both the Hillary Clinton super PAC as well as the Obama administration, where he was letting them know about everything that was going on in this group. And I ended up asking him about him being an administrator, and he ended up coming out and said that he was never an administrator. I don't know why anyone would even say that. So yeah, exactly. And it's like I could even find some like 1 or 2 articles or times where he even stated himself that he was an administrator. So he ended up shooting himself in the foot a lot throughout that conversation. And then Bold and I, after it was done, we ended up going through it piece by piece. I think we ended up doing like a 3-hour stream or something like that, where we just tore the whole thing apart and tore him apart completely. And even in that stream, we had another Facebook one of the members administrator. I think it was Krista actually who ended up coming in.
Crystal Coleman, yeah.
Yeah. She ended up coming on and full out talking about it too, about how he was never an administrator. And he, like through this whole thing, I think he himself admitted that this all took place after Bernie Sanders had dropped out of the primaries anyway. So he pretty much just completely just tore apart his own narrative, and I didn't really have to do anything. Asked him a few questions here, a few questions there, and he did it all to himself, really.
and as one of the sad people that needed help, according to him.
I was wondering if he was making reference to you when he said that. He's like, yeah, these are just sad people.
And you've seen that segment, that Rachel Maddow segment, right, Adrian?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, all the references she made to him, and he was criticizing her in his interview with you.
He was, yeah. He was very critical of anybody who even showed any little bit of skepticism to the whole situation. So eventually I ended up just putting together, I used Wix.com, put together sort of a slapdash website and a few articles on there, and ended up sending him the link after he asked for it. And I haven't heard anything back from him since, so maybe he's starting to get on to that we were playing him, but yeah, he pretty much just destroyed himself with his own words by being inconsistent.
Well, my personal experience with him is he's all about cutting and running.
It definitely seems that way. I mean, it's he hasn't really put out anything that's really been relevant over the last few years. So if I was restricted to just doing these stupid little exposés or these stupid little articles too, I'd probably look for any reason to be relevant again. And I think that's in the end what it was. It was just him looking for more attention and trying to get back the glory that he used to have, because I think he was one of the reporters that broke the Iran-Contra thing, I believe, back in the day.
He used that, yeah.
Yeah, so ever since he's been irrelevant, and I think the fact he actually got attention back in those days is just why he was trying to put this whole narrative together. And what better than to play up on the whole Russia scandal situation?
Well, back during the primary campaign, he would tell those of us fellow local campaign workers that he was targeted by the CIA because of what he did in Iran-Contra.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that he ended up saying that I thought was really funny, he was talking about the invasion of all these trolls on the Facebook account, and he was talking about how he traced them back to like Eastern Europe, and I think he even said Macedonia. But he seemed to imply that all these trolls needed training in order to become trolls, but I think anybody who's actually involved in the online world knows that it's just people screwing around. Around
that time, NPR came out with a story saying that they tracked some trolls that were posting fake stories about Trump and Hillary, and it was a suburb outside of LA.
Oh, really? Right outside of LA?
Yeah.
NPR.
Oh,
so,
wow.
There you go.
And I think it's reasons like this why I think the independent journalists have become such more relevant. Like people doing what we're doing now is because if you can't even do the basic amount of research, I mean, Bold's done more to actually expose this story than any other of these corporate journalists in the media.
He was doing. It was like going down a rabbit hole, I'm sure, for him. But any of those reporters all they had to do was go on Facebook and check who's the admin of that page. They would have seen that he was never an admin. They could have contacted Crystal. It's easy to send her a message on Facebook. Nobody did.
And as you independent journalists do, these other journalists should have just done some simple research, and they could have figured out.
It's going against their propaganda agenda narrative of Russia.
Well,
absolutely.
I have some breaking news, guys. Thanks to you, Adrian. If you can see my screen, John Mattis posted on June 5th, he said, "We will win," from Pulse Niagara, Wix site. So basically, he believed something about it, even though we basically used an identity of a fake person with no LinkedIn account, working for a newspaper that's been defunct since 2008. This is the guy the Huffington Post is relying on as their expert on Russian hacking. So, he says we're going to win, so everybody feel good.
I think I spent 5 minutes on putting that article together. I honestly don't think it was any more than that. No, I didn't think he bought into it at all because I hadn't heard anything from him ever since. And I tried just sending him a message the other day, but I haven't heard back from him.
Well, when you're that good, Adrian, it doesn't take very long. Things come natural. So I guess consider yourself Dwayne Wade because you did it pretty naturally, but like, he used to. So.
The thing is, too, about that is I thought the biggest thing that may have tipped him off that it wasn't a real website was the fact that I didn't even pay to have the Wix logo taken off of the account. Like, it's still up there. If I was to pull it up right now, you could see it. So I thought that alone would have tipped him off. Like any professional news source, any professional magazine would have gladly paid the whatever $15 in order to get the Wix advertisement taken off. Oh, that just made my day, Bull. Thank you for pulling that up. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, this is the article. This is what John Mattis considers real news. You know, you can barely here. You can't see the header, right? So, you know, good work, by the way, Adrian. And then we just yanked his. I mean, he probably doesn't know where we yanked his photo from, and he doesn't care. And well, what else was on this? You know, basically, Adrian was kissing Kathleen Wynn's ass in this article, or did you just take it from somewhere?
Technically, yes, but I'm not going to say where because I feel like that could be a bad thing if somebody found out about that.
Okay, and then another one about Lyme disease or something. So that's you know, that's John Mattis's standards of journalism. So.
That's awesome, Adrian.
Thank you. And actually, another thing I thought was going to give me away was that I wrote one that was specifically about him, and then the first one that I wrote was actually because the guy who ended up winning our election, Doug Ford, I was sort of presenting it as how I was taking John Mattis's information and how it could play into our elections. And in that one, I couldn't get the message to disappear, but it said it was supposed to be up a few weeks ago, and then it said it was updated 9 hours before. So I thought that again was going to give me away. I honestly can't believe he bought into it. I thought I just put it together and hope for the best. What was that? Probably about a total of 3 hours just to get the whole website up and running. That's between getting all the advertisements on there, all the articles that I either wrote myself or I managed to pull from here and there. But yeah, I was just sort of because I only found out about it because I saw his email where he's asking for a link, and that was the night before I ended up sending it off to him. So I just quickly got on Wix. I contacted Bold, asked him what he should do. He sent me the link to Wix, so I quickly put it together in maybe 2-3 hours, and that was it. I haven't updated it since. If he has gone back to check it, it's still the same articles from like June 1st or something. It's the 13th, and it's supposed to be a weekly magazine.
Yeah, I've thought about. I mean, we could just we could keep like making up fake journalists. I mean, I could do like a German accent and call them up and say, "We are afraid of collusion, mein Herr. Could you help us?" You know, we just fake stuff. I have like the worst accents. He probably still would fall for it.
So this guy, he joins the group. So this guy works for Brock, and or you suspect he works for Brock, but he didn't even. It wasn't even like him putting any sort of Brock bots. It was just taking advantage of people that were just fucking around, like just like generic trolls, and then him just using that to claim it was Russia.
I mean, we were on the Facebook page. We were Bernie volunteers. We gave up our lives for a year and a half for Bernie. Yeah, I know. But he was volunteering too, except that he would show up and not really do a whole lot. He organized some election viewing parties, but he would show up at events and we didn't think anything of it. Okay, he's trying to help for Bernie, And once in a while, just very rarely, would he post something on Facebook, on the Facebook page. He actually is more involved with the Progressive Democrats of America San Diego branch because they have a meetup group. And that's the first time we met him was at the PDA meeting in San Diego. But, then all of a sudden, I mean, he knows Joanne. He had lunch with her like a couple of weeks before the very first article came out. He never said, hey, you know what? Something's going on. I'm going to be investigating this Russia thing. Never. All of a sudden, we're seeing this in articles, and Joanne's been emailing him and calling him, and he's just dodging her, And then we find out he's on Rachel Maddow. We're like, what the hell?
Wow.
And with Josephine's reference to how he didn't post much in the Bernie groups. The only time that he picked up the pace on that was when it became obvious that Bernie was going to go down, and then he started posting a bunch of garbage about how we were all supposed to get behind Hillary, and then it transitioned into his whole Russiagate narrative from there. And then once we confronted him online about it, then he blocked us and got booted out of some of the groups, and we've never heard from him again.
But I mean, he's been going to all the Democratic club meetings. We have like 15 different Democratic clubs in San Diego. He's been going to all those meetings and putting on a presentation about how all these Russian trolls were infiltrating the Bernie pages, and that's why Hillary lost.
And that's where we came up to the point where we confronted him in person.
We went to the Vista Democratic Club meeting, and they basically yelled at us and told us to leave because we weren't welcome. Well, we tried to tell the truth.
And he tried to run off.
Madge stopped him at the door.
The other thing I want to mention this, Jim and Josephine were delegates at the convention in Philadelphia. So it's not like...
There were about 500 of us that wore this shirt the last day of the convention.
That's when they tried to darken all the section where Bernie was sitting, so our shirts started glowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the DNC pulled a lot of shit at that convention. It was really like the Truman Show.
Oh, yeah. It was ridiculous.
Anyway.
Well, that's the other thing I noticed when I was talking to him is he completely overlooked, like it seemed deliberate almost, about everything that they were pulling against Bernie Sanders. I mean, he didn't bring up anything having to do with the amount of the debates being like there were less debates. He didn't bring up anything about how Hillary was being fed questions. He was just very pro-Hillary, despite the fact he was supposed to be a Bernie supporter.
In Vista, he was trying to, voter shame us and say, "Oh, who did you vote for?" And I thought, why? He's like, well, because I voted for Hillary and I'm proud of it. I'm like, oh, we would have liked to have this information before when you were supposedly helping us with the Bernie, volunteering. I
mean, the one thing he did say to me, which I actually felt was probably the most honest thing he did say the entire phone call with him, is he said that there was no way that they were going to allow there were no way they were going to allow Bernie to win the actual primaries. And I actually do agree with that, as the fact that he was an independent and an outsider.
Yeah, I have the quote. I have the quote on the last article. He says, "Think of how naive it was for people to believe that the Democratic Party was going to give us a fair shake. I mean, that's just absurd. The Democratic Party is controlled by the same corporate interests as the Republican Party." And then he trolled on. He like kind of droned on for a little bit, and then he said Bernie did the right thing by giving over to Hillary Clinton. So, he's essentially agreed that it's a corporate party. But then he says, well, it's good that he rendered himself over to Hillary, which is one of the reasons I was never, this is an important point. Like neither me nor Adrian are supporters of Hillary, of obviously not Hillary, but of Bernie. But the whole voter shaming aspect of it is what's really got me, because honestly, I could give a shit if somebody votes for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein or something. I actually wrote an article that before the election, when I wasn't even doing a lot of media, I just had my own blog. I said, if you really want to talk about personal character, I mean, Jill Stein's the only normal person running in the race. She's a physician. She might have some weird opinions, but in terms of personal conduct, she doesn't have any strikes against her. So this was the whole aspect that drew me in, even though I'm a Rand Paul supporter. I did vote for Donald Trump. Yeah. But when people guilt other people into voting for their candidate, I think that's like an indication that we're entering into like really basically the Salem witch trials, that type of society. Right.
Well, one thing to consider with regard to Mattis's comments about Hillary or Bernie getting behind Hillary, we delegates had that mass conference call with him the day after he endorsed her, which was about a week before the convention. And he explained to us that he endorsed her to make a deal with the DNC that would allow us to have roll call votes in the convention. Otherwise, the DNC was going to insist that Hillary gets the nomination by acclamation, which would have meant our votes wouldn't have counted. Not that they did anyways, probably. But that was what he told us. The reason why he endorsed her was because he had to make that deal to support his delegates.
Wow, just to support the delegates, eh? Like that's
so we could participate in roll call votes at the convention.
Sounds like he's almost making a deal with the devil right there.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think he made that deal when he signed up to run as a Democrat. That's my personal opinion.
And I agree.
He also said to me is why would he be faking this story? Because, he dedicated something like a year and a half to the Bernie Sanders campaign. But to me, it seems pretty obvious that if he's playing more the role of a mole inside the Bernie Sanders campaign, then there's no reason he would leave, and he would play that role absolutely.
Great minds must be thinking alike, because I've nicknamed him Mole Mattis for a long time.
I like the nickname. It's very good. So as it stands, we're just trying to continue on with this and see how much more we can expose on John Mattis, because we've played a lot of our cards. If he's still willing to buy into it, maybe we'll hear back from him soon, but I don't know how much is left with this story. Maybe Bold has a better idea on that.
I just appreciate that you guys are covering it, because the only other person that covered this was Lauren Steiner. She interviewed Alita Pierce. But other than that, no one wants to know the truth about this. Everybody's just been, taking John for his word, and they just...
And Jamal.
Infiltrate. Yes, Jamal covered it after you did. Thank you, and I appreciate that. But other than that, everybody's believing that our pages were infiltrated with all these Russian fake news stories, and it's just nonsense.
And if I may add, it would seem to me like we could really close the deal down on him if there was some way we could follow the money and see if there's see if there's a way to expose a financial connection between him and David Brock.
Well, there's a couple avenues that we can bring this forward, okay? And first of all, to the audience out there, we've been tweeting to a lot of other media figures, and I'm talking about running the gamut from on the right side to American Spectator and Daily Caller, and on the left side, Jimmy Dore Show, and I believe, who else did I email? What's that other guy's name? You guys contacted him. It was the guy from RT. Lee Camp?
Lee Camp. Okay.
Lee Camp, there you go.
We tried to contact Lee Camp, but I thought you said you were going to contact H.A. Goodman too.
Yeah, I've been tweeting him but H.A. Goodman, it's debatable whether he's on the left or not anymore.
I know.
but the fact of the matter is that what we've been trying to do, me, Adrian, and the delegates, Jim and Josephine and the other people, is to illustrate how bad of a scandal this could be for multiple media outlets. Okay, so I'll read off the list of different media outlets that have used this story. So there's BuzzFeed, which did say that as of now, this was on election day, November 8th. They said, as of now, neither Mattis nor BuzzFeed News have unearthed any evidence that links the spammers to coordinated campaign to suppress Clinton votes. So believe it or not, in this case, BuzzFeed has the best integrity of any of the media outlets here. So
first of all, even if you take his assumption that we had Russian fake news stories, who the hell believe? That Bernie supporters decided before even the elections were over for the primaries that if she won, we would not be voting for her. That Bernie and Bus group started almost when Bernie was running. So this was decided long before.
I'm sure you've all seen where Bernie or Bust is a hashtag on social media, and that came about long before the primaries were over.
We were given notice way in advance that we weren't going to be voting for her. Way before they even thought of even conjuring up Russia.
And as someone who hasn't trusted Hillary Clinton from a policy standpoint since 1993, why would she ever get my vote?
No, there's, Bernie did reach across party lines. He reached out to Green Party Libertarians, Republicans. He wasn't just talking to Democrats because he was an independent. And I think some people heard some of what he had to say and thought, yeah, maybe I will vote for him, you know? And when he lost, they weren't going to stick around for Hillary. She was not their consolation prize. And I keep saying it, as racist as this country is, people chose a black man over her. That's the clear message that they're saying. We don't like you. Not the first time you ran, and not the second time either.
So here's the names of all the outlets that bit on John Mattis' story. You have the New Yorker. So their main editor, David, is his name? Yeah, David Remnick, he was an Iraq war guy. He wrote an article. He was the first actual news outlet to list Mattis after BuzzFeed. Huffington Post, that's the big one, with Ryan Grimm, who later left for The Intercept. So he's the main culprit in this. He's the person who screwed the most people. Inquisitor, and by the way, he works for TYT. Raw Story, Daily Kos. Sorry, this was a Daily Kos blog, but John Mattis used a blog from the Daily Kos as proof of his theory, even though it was basically a copy and paste job from the Huffington Post article. But it is on his website, so it's credible news. There's the Rachel Maddow show, of course, where I found these two individuals. San Diego Free Press, Times of San Diego, U.S. News and World Report, The Guardian, Raw Story, which sucks, Reverb Press, Newsweek, and the New York Times. So all of them, plus Harvey Melber, have used John Mattis bullshit as basically credible news material. And if this was to be propagated, think how many people would have to, come out and say, correction, we basically essentially had somebody on who has the credibility of, Lamar Odom when he was in his cocaine phase. That's essentially what's going on here.
They would have to admit that they're fake news.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So it's an issue of like some of the corporate outlets that parrot the stories, but then particularly Grimm is one of the people that was basically derelict in his duty as a journalist, because any journalist worth anything would have obviously checked and looked into the claims that Mattis made, and he didn't do that at all. He just took his word. So this is a great lesson as far as the corporate media will listen to any lunatic. They do not give a shit. Any lunatic that says something, they will count that as a source, or even they brought him on the show, right, on Maddow. So
if it's their narrative, they're going to run with it.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
And
That's incredible.
to me, I see that as working to distract and divide we the people.
Yeah, it's just the level. There's no. I mean, it's this bad. It's this bad. It's so. Now, was there anyone else as far as interviews? I mean, I'll do whatever I can here. I just I wish we could get this to a larger platform, because you have eyewitnesses and you have the complete deconstruction of this guy. I mean, this is a slam dunk as far as a story, as far as evidence is concerned. Are there other people to be interviewed about this that we could have, I could eventually have on?
Connected with Alita Pierce, Crystal Coleman.
And Joanne, she said telephonically she would be glad to be interviewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's other people that are Jim's not the only Facebook whore. There's other people that were on that page all the time, and we can send you their names and they can confirm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
there's a legion of local grassroots activists who all didn't fall for his bullshit.
I do agree ultimately, like if there's a way that you can somehow connect the dots with the money with Brock, that would really be amazing. So Bold, is there like what's the deal with that? Is that like a difficult thing to try to get, especially if the guy's spooked, or what's like the next potential
Look,
step.
the issue with that is, this is the same as another story I'm trying to work on, which I would publish for your site too. But I'm not an accountant. I can't, I'm obviously not a law enforcement officer, thank God. And
I think Joanne might have some info with regard to money, because she did some research on where he lives. And I don't know enough about it. She would know.
Yeah, I don't know if we have, because in terms of campaign contributions, we went on the FEC website, and it was demonstrated that John Mattis did not donate a single cent to the Sanders 2016 campaign. There was another John Mattis in another part of California that donated to the Trump 2016 campaign. Thank you, sir. But sorry, Jim. But in any case, the issue is that when it comes to investigative journalists, I really am not going to go into the part where I can't get into somebody's tax returns. There is a such thing as invasion of privacy. The very fact that I talked to Adrian Lloyd in order to talk to Mattis was because he's in Canada, and Canada has what is it, a one part? Yeah. So Mattis lives in California. So if I would have called him from Ohio, there's kind of an ambiguity whether I could be charged under California law. But obviously in Canada, they're not going to be able to get to Adrian here. So the bottom line here is the problem that we're not professional journalists. Any of the four of us here that are talking to you, HB. We're kind of, I'm a shit poster. Adrian's kind of you do have a YouTube channel too. And, we're basically doing this almost as a hobby. But if anybody out there has accounting expertise or kind of a connection to, for example, the Secret Service deals with financial crimes, that would be the way to go into this. And there are other stories that I do want to cover that I need that type of help with, because, just like a lot of progressive activists say, when you're talking about a scandal, you do have to follow the money. It's correct. And that's where we're stuck right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, though, that we may be able to find some public records of maybe Mattis and Brock together, possibly, or maybe there's something out there when it comes to already public, when it comes to financial. We can keep digging and see what we can dig up, but it'll be difficult.
Yeah, Joanne Mickelson might have some information on that.
Yeah, maybe we should give her a call there, Bold.
Yeah, we need to get more of that material, and we also, whatever we can't find, that's really a matter that, whatever is not public record, we would need attorneys and things like that in order to get into that. So that depends on how far the will is. Now, the problem is that one of the reasons I think we're not getting exposure is that, obviously, Hard Bastard, your channel is all about fake news stuff every day.
Sure.
So there's such a preponderance of stuff that's going on that's obviously fake, that this type of thing kind of, people don't see the trees for the forest, because there's just too much of it. And unfortunately, that's how, obviously people have ignored the story of it's not just Joanne and Josephine and Jim here, but other people around the country have been smeared with this whole Albanian troll thing and whatever. And by the way, Jim is a U.S. Navy vet. Josephine, I tried asking her a question in Russian. It didn't work. It doesn't, the whole issue here is that the media organizations do feel that the average person can be manipulated in order to fit their goals, their agenda. And, they are getting away with it in that respect. So, if you can reach out to H.A. Goodman,
sure.
Hard Bastard, I know you have a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. If you can reach out to Tim Pool, I've tried to contact him. I've tried to contact a lot of people. But I do thank you for, allowing me to publish this on your site.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Yeah, if you have any sort of follow-up, or you want to set something else up with the other people, once I get my call system back working, we can do that, because this is like the Maddow video could be deconstructed just based off of like what we knew about Brock and all of that shit. But this is now the living, breathing witnesses to the fact that this is like a layer that doesn't usually come into play as far as, like, for me, like the people who were actually publicly defamed by MSNBC are willing to speak about it, and you basically have a call that you were able to get with a guy who is potentially a person that worked for Brock, and that, I mean, because the thing that's amazing here is that it gives you, like, I guess, insight into the type of people that Brock would hire and the type of people that work for CTR. Like, these are clowns. These are total clowns that have zero credibility, and they're treated as legitimate sources by the corporate media. They have the power to make up any bullshit they want about any person, and the media will speak about it before millions of people.
Absolutely.
Sadly, yes.
Well, you have to remember, HB, that David Brock was at one point, he was a journalist himself. He worked for American Spectator. He exposed, I mean, he did write a book about Anita Hill that I didn't read, but he exposed Troopergate, where, you know, Arkansas state troopers came forward. Law enforcement officers admitted that they procured women for Bill Clinton in order for him to basically, you know, either rape or, you know, have consensual sex with. At one point, he was a credible journalist. But then, you know, he got wise to the way the industry runs, and he crossed over the other side. He's written a book about that. I think I have that book. It's not that interesting. But the fact of the matter is that John Mattis also apparently had, you know, a goal once in his life, you know, with the Iran-Contra and another story he did on the secret army. He was a journalist. And then, you know, eventually his career hit the skids. And this is what he's doing. So, I mean, this is kind of a tale of, you know, basically people becoming corrupt. It's like, you know, he's basically, it's like at one point he was awesome 70s Aerosmith, and then eventually he became corrupted and he became Armageddon Aerosmith. You know, it's like, you know, he lost his way. So that's basically the best way I can, you know, put a metaphor to it.
Yeah, I can't get over how little they put into the research. They just don't care about any of it. And was there any fallout? I mean, I imagine, like, you know, your friends are like, I mean, I don't know if your friends are watching MSNBC, but, like, did any of you guys have fallout from, like, holy shit, my Facebook ID has just been put on television and people are saying that I'm a Russian bot? Is there anything, any sort of, like, personal fallout that happened? Or
Oh, absolutely. There were quite a few people who have known me in person for decades who fell for it, and they really did believe that I was a sellout, or I was
oh my God.
There was one guy that got into it with Alita and I and you, and we had to block him because we were trying to tell him that it wasn't true, and he didn't want to believe that it wasn't true.
Jesus Christ. This is like the cult. I was in a cult. I was in the Jehovah's Witness cult, and this behavior is just, it's so similar.
It's such brainwashing.
Oh
yeah.
My God.
I have to say, you know, I was reading through some of those because they added me to the group just so I could read through some of the evidence.
Yeah.
And people that know me, I'm not exactly the most empathetic person. So I was reading some of the posts where, what's her name? The sister, Sarah.
Oh yeah, Sarah.
John Mattis' sister was arguing with people, and I'm just laughing at her posts because she's basically like, well, he's just trying to clean up the Democratic Party, you know, and you're not helping. We have to get together, everybody. And it's like, dear God, I mean, what are you like? Are you like a live action Care Bear or something like that? That's what I was getting from her. It was impossible to understand because her brother was basically not replying to these people's anything that they were saying. and I mean Joanne, who I think I've heard Joanne talk to Jamarl on the phone. She kind of went through the whole process of trying to get him to really come forth and confess to what exactly his whole intention was, and he just wouldn't respond.
Absolutely.
All right, so like, what's the next step? Basically, just trying to get this out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, the next step on that front is to have, there's more people that can come forward and as many outlets as possible to talk to. I mean, whether it's on YouTube or obviously there's Caitlin Johnstone, who's a writer with some credibility, and the other outlets that haven't covered it yet. The Daily Caller. I know that they're busy. I did try to contact Luke Rosiak, but this is a type of story that he would like, in my opinion. But you're not going to get people. Unfortunately, TYT is tainted by this actual scandal.
Yeah.
So they're not going to come forward and throw their boy over the bridge. It's unfortunate that the best outlets in terms of capacity in the progressive media, I don't think that they're ready yet to confront this issue. It's not the most important issue out there, but I think it's very important to illustrate exactly how wild everything's gotten in terms of this Russia thing, because I do know people who are, they're Russian Americans. This is making them become more pro-Trump. It's good for me. It's good for, it's good for promoting the beliefs that I have. It's not healthy for the political discourse, though. There does have to be more of a balance in terms of the media, in terms of getting, different viewpoints out, even viewpoints that I disagree with. So anybody that can come and discuss it with these people, whether it is Caitlin Johnstone or Elizabeth Voss or HA or Tim Black, I've talked to Secret Service agent Gary Byrne, who has his own radio show. We might have an interview with him. And anybody that wants to feature it, either Adrian or myself or Joanne and Josephine and Jim would be perfectly willing to talk to them about it. And then in terms of investigation, in order to get into, how much the super PAC is involved with John Mattis, I think you would need some sort of subpoena or something. I don't know if we can actually invade their corporate records that way. So,
Shadow Benefactor in the chat says, firstly, he says, "Bull like a leopard." He loves your articles. The key, he's saying, the key is fire requests. If it will uncover if the government's involved, they have to respond in 30 days. So I don't know if there's anything that can be where a fire request could be used.
He opens a different angle to that. That's a good question. Now, when Adrian talked to John Mattis actually made an implication that he was not only in contact with 21st century American Bridge 21st Century. He also decided to talk to the Obama administration, and if he was in daily contact with the Obama administration, this could constitute a case of domestic spying on some of these people. Now, it could be that he's a bleeding liar. I mean, imagine. I mean, it's possible, but if he was, then it's possible that we could subpoena or file a FOIA request just like Judicial Watch does, and then in that case we would probably have to. Judicial Watch does it all the time. We could get their interest in it. I don't know if you guys follow Judicial Watch.
Oh yeah, I love Judicial Watch.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
All right. Well, yeah, I think what I'll do, I'll also just redo. I'm gonna do that video again because this is a completely new context of everything. Like this is crazy. I mean, this is fucking crazy. All of this is crazy. Not only the story, but again, I just can't get over how they'll just talk to any clown and take what they say as long as it agrees with the narrative, and they don't care that people have to suffer consequences. I wish there was, and I say this all the time because one of the things I cover a lot are the hit pieces that the corporate media come out with against whether it's YouTubers or whatever. And I mean, you guys were basically libeled. And I wish there was a way. The issue with libel or any of the legal stuff is that the access to the courts for regular Americans, it's just not practical. You have to have a lot of money or some sort of backing, and it's especially against a corporation like MSNBC, that would just be incredible. But yeah, like I'll do what I can here. Hopefully the more people pick it up. Is anyone, we're about out of time. Does anyone have anything they want to close with? Any further points they want to make?
Well, for me these days, it's all about truth bombing. That's what I try to do.
I appreciate you that you're trying to get the news out, the truth.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. And again, Bold Like a Leopard, this is your story. You did great. Thank you for putting it on our site.
Thanks. And I will say, you know, it's taken a while to really propagate it, but you have some of the best viewers, you know, and some of them follow my channel too. Mm-hmm. Eric and Comrade McCarthy, Lennon McCarthy. So he has a channel too, Lennon McCarthy. He's been a lot of help. Of course, Adrian, who's he has his own channel, Just My Stupid Opinion. And you know, we're not going to be full-time journalists, but it's kind of given us more of a purpose to just read deeper and maybe make something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just like get in touch if you want to do a follow-up, and we'll have another one of these. And yeah, I'm gonna do it probably next week. I'll do a segment and redo I've never done a redo on a piece of propaganda, but now that Matto video, I'll have to do it again. Yeah, if that's it, I appreciate all you guys coming on. Sorry that you had to go through that. That's a horrible experience.
Try to contact Joanne and do a telephone interview with her. She can probably add some more stuff to it.
Sure, absolutely. Just for reference, I can be contacted either by email, hardnewsnetwork@gmail.com, also on Twitter. My DMs are open. It's at @hard_bastard, and I get a lot of emails and DMs, so if you don't hear from me, just kind of re-email or re-DM, and yeah, so.
Okay, we'll try to get we'll work to get Joanne to reach out to you as well.
Sure, that would be great.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone coming on, and yeah, and yeah, you're very welcome. And again, check out Bold Like a Leopard's channel. Check out Bold Like a Leopard's submissions on hardnews.network. And Adrian, what was the name of your channel again?
It's called Just My Stupid Opinion.
All right, cool. So yeah, check that out. And yeah, so just real quick before I end, Bold or Adrian, this call, you guys have it out there that we can listen to, or it's because you did it on a stream, right? Did you?
Oh yeah, it's on your site too. It's on the article is called "The MattesFile Uncovered the Raving Russophobia Signals the End of Liberalism." So it's on YouTube, on Adrian's channel, and we have it embedded in one of your articles.
All right, awesome. So, yeah,
and I can always email it to you directly if you prefer, just to have a hard copy of it on your computer or anything.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And yes, I recommend people check that out. That's, I mean, you basically are undercover with a Brock, or an alleged, I guess we have to say alleged at this point, Brock operative, but most likely a Brock operative. So yeah, definitely check that out. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate coming on, and until next time, have a great night, guys.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Good night.